Ah, the Oregon Trail. For those of you who have never played the game, it's an educational choose-your-own adventure meant to teach children history and computer programming at the same time. Here's a more detailed description from classicreload.com, where you can play the 1990 version of the game for free. The Oregon Trail is a computer game originally developed by Don Rawitch, Bill Heineman, and Paul Dillenberger in 1971 and produced by MECC in 1974. The original game was designed to teach school children about the realities of 19th century pioneer life on the Oregon Trail. The player assumes the role of a wagon leader, guiding his party of settlers from Independence, Missouri to Oregon's Willamette Valley over the Oregon Trail via Conestoga wagon in 1848. The Oregon Trail, originally just called Oregon, was such a hit with kids it ended up defining an entire generation growing up in the 80s and early 90s, the so-called Oregon Trail generation, and continues to be a popular educational tool to this day. But with that said, how accurate is the Oregon Trail really? Did the things that happen in the game happen in real life? Well, that's what we're going to explore today, and we'll do so by comparing your in-game experience with the real thing. So hitch up your wagon, team, and let's hit the trail, 'cause it's Oregon or bust, baby. Now, the first crucial question we have to ask is, what is the Oregon Trail? Well, it's a 2,200-mile wagon route and immigrant trail that ran east to west across the U.S. and followed the Great River valleys through 6 present-day states: Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, Idaho, and Oregon. The trail was originally called the Platte River Road and was used by fur traders who traversed it on either foot or horseback. But starting in the 1830s, it became a popular wagon route, with thousands of people using it to get as far west as California and Oregon. Thus, the name was changed to the Oregon Trail in the 1840s. Although it was called the Oregon Trail, there was more than one trail used by pioneers. Once you got past the Platte River, you could use the California Trail to get to California, the Mormon Trail to get to Utah, and the Bozeman Trail to get to Montana. There were also a number of shortcuts: the Lander Cutoff, the Farson Cutoff, the Sublette Cutoff, and so forth. According to Oregon Trail enthusiast and author Rinker Buck, there were as many as 40 cutoffs and alternate branches along the main route, which meant immigrants had a lot of choices. To make it easier to keep track of each other, family and friends would sometimes leave a barrel full of name cards at a junction, so people behind them on the trail knew which way they went. Thousands of pioneers also left their names on rocks and trees, although usually that was just to say they'd been there. At any rate, now that we have a better understanding of just what the Oregon Trail is, let's get into the difference between the game's interpretation of what it was like to travel on it and reality. In the game, you start your adventure by choosing one of 3 occupations. You can be a banker from Boston, a farmer from Illinois, or a carpenter from Ohio. Your choice sets the difficulty level for the game, with banker being the easiest and farmer being the hardest. In reality, the type of people crossing the trail was much more varied. One pioneer named Ralph C. Gear left a wonderfully detailed account of just how many careers could be found in a single wagon train heading west. Quote, "We had preachers with their Bibles and psalm books, doctors with their medicine chests, lawyers with their law books, school teachers, merchants, nurserymen with their trees and seeds, stockmen with their fine horses and cattle, millers, millmen, millwrights, wheelwrights, carpenters, cabinet makers with their chest of tools, blacksmiths, gunsmiths, and silversmiths, tailors, shoemakers, saddlers, dressmakers, a lumberman with his heavy log wagon, and last but not least, farmers with and without their families." What a diverse list of people! And the reasons for going west were equally diverse. Some were fleeing religious persecution. Others hoped to procure new land being offered by the U.S. government. Some people wanted to start their lives over after the 1837 financial panic. Missionaries were determined to convert Native Americans, whether they liked it or not. And finally, after the discovery of gold in California, around 30,000 prospectors also hit the road in the hopes of striking it rich. In the game, you're never told why you and your family are on the move, but you are told you'll be starting your journey in 1848 from Independence, Missouri. And that is historically accurate. 1848 was a popular travel year, and Independence was one of the most popular jumping-off points for the trail. Other popular starting towns included St. Joseph, Kansas City, and Westport, Missouri, as well as the Mormon Crossing in Council Bluffs, Iowa. After you choose your profession, your next big decision in the game is when to start your adventure. You have the choice of leaving as early as March or as late as July. Leave too early, the game warns you, and you'll run out of provisions. Leave too late, and you'll be subjected to harsh winters that could wipe out your entire party. And all of this was very true, which is why most settlers began their cross-country adventure between April and early May, which, pro tip, is about when you should start your adventure in the game. Before I go any further, I should note that in real life, not everyone in the 19th century traveled west by land. Between April 1849 and January 1850, which was the height of the California gold rush, nearly 40,000 people arrived in San Francisco by ship. These so-called California Argonauts had two sea routes available to them. They could spend nearly a year going around the tip of South America, which was the longest but possibly safest way to travel, or take a shortcut across Panama, which shortened the sea voyage but had all sorts of dangers, including outbreaks of disease and attacks by natives. There was also the promise of a newfangled way to go west, by airship. In 1849, during the fevered frenzy of the gold rush, a New Yorker named Rufus Porter, who incidentally was the founder of Scientific American magazine, was convinced he had the ultimate solution for beating everyone to the gold fields: an 800-foot-long aerial locomotive made of giant balloons powered by steam engines. Before he had even tested his invention, Rufus began advertising that in just one flight, he could transfer an average of 50 to 100 people to California in as little as 3 days. Normally, the trip would cost you $200, but if you subscribed early to his 19th century Kickstarter campaign, you could go on the maiden voyage for as little as $50, which included meals and glasses of wine. Unfortunately, the inventor got a little ahead of himself. He was never actually able to build the airship, and after a series of unfortunate setbacks, he finally gave up trying. But believe it or not, somebody did fly the Oregon Trail. In 1924, an Oregon Trail conservationist named Ezra Meeker flew over the trail in a biplane at age 94. So, technically, flying the Oregon Trail was an option. But in the end, most people made the journey west by land.